Hi, these are the fill-in-the-blank notes for Management 1000 lecture number 8. And one of the first things we did in today's class was thinking in business models. And the question I posed was, how do you get from point A to point B? So point A was Toronto and point B was Guelph. And there's any number of different ways that you can come up with, so you can use a car, a train, a bike, a bus, and any number of different options. And what you needed to sort of think about was, even within the car, there are a number of different options you can have for the automobile value proposition and the customer segments. So even though the car is still there, there's any number of different revenue streams. So for example, you could own a car, you could lease a car, you could rent a car. There are car sharing arrangements where you purchase, sort of a time ownership or access to an automobile, and then you use it. So, a car is one way to get from Toronto to Guelph, but there's any number of different structures that will, be different revenue streams between, car dealers, car lessors, car rental agencies, so on and so forth, and any sort of different cost structures for you as a user of this service. Likewise for trains and all these different things. And you can start thinking about the value propositions again on a 2x2 matrix. So here we go. We can have cost and we can have flexibility. And again, a nice little 2x2 matrix. High cost, low flexibility, high flexibility. And a car would be up here, no matter sort of which ownership structure you have. Although you might argue that, a shared car, a car share kind of arrangement, has less flexibility and perhaps a lower cost. A bicycle has lots of flexibility, maybe not much speed, but it would be a low-cost option compared to a car. And a bus has lower cost than a car, but less flexibility. And then a train, again, train might be a lower cost option than a bus, or it might be the same, but certainly less flexible because of timetables. And flexibility deals with things like time, where you can go. Trains can only go to train stations. They can't take you directly to your door, different things like that. So you can have different parameters within flexibility. So you can think of things on a 2x2 matrix, and you can come up with different value propositions. Who are the people who take the buses? Who are the people who take the trains? Who are the people that share cars? So on and so forth. And then answering those questions, the point A to point B, you can come up with value propositions for them. You can define those various customer segments, and so on and so forth. And that's how the business model canvas works. Okay, so then we talked about strategy with Michael Porter, and during this segment I had a little video clip of Michael Porter being interviewed, and he talked about the 5 forces model, which is one of the most famous models in all of strategy. And as he was talking, I was busy annotating this diagram, but here are the big things to keep in mind. First of all, 5 forces is an industry level model. So it's not looking at a particular company, it's looking at a particular industry. And the example he gave was the airline industry. And, there's lots of competition in the industry already. And most of these competitors are focused on price. So there's intense rivalry. It's focused on price. Customers are very fickle. So if I can get the next flight and I'm going to save a couple of bucks, I will do that versus, showing any loyalty. Although they try to buy loyalty with airplanes and different things like that. We're interested in what drives profitability, what are the trends to consider, what are the constraints that you run into, and different things like that. There are low barriers to entry, so you can rent a plane, you can hire a pilot, you can start your own airline, you can rent a gate or lease a gate at an airport, and start a simple point-to-point kind of thing. The suppliers have great bargaining power, so the airline or airplane builders, Boeing and Airbus and those guys, the pilots also have great bargaining power. The Rolls-Royce and Pratt & Whitney, the guys that supply the engines and so on. Right? Without the pilots, you're not going anywhere. So they have lots of bargaining power. There are substitute products. Again, trains, cars. Now, it's less convenient to get from New York to Los Angeles on a train, but if you're just going, New York to Philadelphia or Washington or something, train is a low-cost alternative, kind of like what we saw in the 2x2 matrix above. So he talks about this industry and how it's generally not very profitable, although there's spurts of profitability. And he talks about comparing this to the soft drink industry. And the big idea here is that you look at the underlying economic drivers, and then figure out the implications of that. Implications. There we go. Sorry for the messy handwriting with the stylus here. Underlying economic drivers. So again, you can look at economic drivers, price of jet fuel. What's going to happen there? It's going to squeeze the customers. Then you introduce these fuel surcharges and all that kind of stuff to make up the difference. And that's it. So Porter was talking about this model. We annotated it on the fly. The business model environment, again from our business model generation book. This industry forces piece over here. This is basically Porter's 5 forces. Porter's famous 5 forces. Looking macroeconomic, what's happening globally, market conditions, capital markets, price of fuel, all those kinds of things. Looking at your particular market segments, so on and so forth. So this would be, in the Canadian airline market, maybe even the Toronto market and so on. And then looking at key trends with respect to technology, regulation, and different things like that. So all of these things impact on our business model canvas. And then I gave a little example of BlackBerry. So BlackBerry owned the smartphone market. They developed it. And then I gave a number of examples, different things come along. Phone for cameras. BlackBerry says, no one's ever going to want a phone for a camera. Well, they do. So then you come up with different models of how you're going to implement that in your product. And you choose one, and then you move along. Apple comes along with the iPhone. BlackBerry says, just another consumer product. Nope, not just another consumer product. Okay, well, now let's go back to the drawing board and figure out, what kind of new value proposition we need. Oh, we need something with a touchscreen, so on and so forth. Right? Tablet. What is this trying to solve? Said Mike Lazaridis and Jim Balsillie. And again, so they go back to the drawing board, try to come up with a value proposition. In this case, it was the playbook and so on, apps, and different things like that. So there's going to be trends, industry forces, all these things are going to be pushing your business model around over time as it flows left to right. And how do you come up with new business models to react to these drivers? So that was the example we used in class. Blue ocean strategy is trying to come up with more value for less cost or less price. There we go. And again, we had a little discussion about Southwest Airlines, and we had an expert talking about Southwest and the value curve model. There it is right there. So the way this thing works is you can draw a line kind of right through the middle of this. And then on this side of the line, I put a big minus sign. On this side of the line, a big plus sign. So what are the things you can reduce? So you can't remove it altogether, but what are the things you can reduce? And then what are the things you can eliminate? Hence the minus sign. And on the plus side, what are the things that you can create? And what are the things that currently exist that you can increase? And they gave an example, again, talking about Southwest Airlines. On the reduction side, they reduced the cost. So that there's always going to be cost, but they reduce the cost. There's always going to be turnaround time. A plane comes into the gate, people get off the plane, they groom the plane, people get on the plane. If you can turn your plane around faster and reduce your turnaround time, you can get it back in the air faster, make more money. So they reduced the turnaround time, reduced the cost. They eliminated stuff like meals, lounges, reservation classes, first class, second class, all that kind of stuff. So they eliminated that. So again, this is on the minus side to create more value. On the plus side, well, they created different things. So rather than a hub and spoke model, which many airlines were using at the time, this is the reason why you go from Toronto to Florida, you have to go to Chicago, change planes, and then go here. They said, let's go direct point to point. So that was a strategy, a creation strategy. They created added benefit, friendly service, and so on and so forth. Right, and away we go. So that was the example there, looking at Southwest Airlines. And again, one of these other classic business stories. Southwest Airlines is often held up as an example for other companies. And we looked at the Southwest model. So let me just talk very briefly about this. So here's an average airline, sort of middle of the road for price. These are the things that are important to customers. So price, meals, lounges, and again, sort of a high, low kind of rating, right? So this is the value curve for an average airline. And then when you look at, we'll skip over this dash line here, which is cars. If we look at the Southwest airline here in solid, okay, much lower price. So they're different from the airplane competitor there. No meals or few meals, no lounges, seating class choices, right? So they're basically different from their competitors in every different thing. And here we have customers or friendly service. Southwest is up here, and regular airlines down there. Speed, again, if you're turning your planes around quicker, speed's increased. And point-to-point departure, regular airlines, non-existent. So what you want to do is you want to map out your curve against others in your industry and see if you are different, because as we know right from the quote at the beginning, strategy is about making choices, trade-offs. It's about deliberately choosing to be different. So that's the essence of strategy, again, right from Michael Porter. Okay. So we talked about Southwest, and then we went into a formative assessment quiz. So I'm going to stop this video here, and then we'll have a separate video for the formative assessment quiz. These are the notes for lecture number 8.